Let's have another rousing round of applause as this MOU gets signed. This event is about celebrating exceptional achievements, and the theme continues with this MOU. May there be many more of such. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you. We shall shortly commence session 4.
Power distribution companies, BSES Rajdhani Power Limited and BSES Yamuna Power Limited, supply electricity to two-thirds of the national capital, powering Delhi and empowering over 50 lakh consumers and 2 crore residents in South, West, East, and Central Delhi for the last 22 years. Today, BSES has emerged as a modern distribution company with one of the most advanced distribution networks deploying the next generation technologies. In this journey, BSES discoms have reduced AT&C losses from 56% in 2002 to around 6.6%, a record reduction of nearly 50%, catapulting us to the league of leading discoms globally. BSES has also transformed consumer care and is at the forefront of sustainable growth by championing rooftop solar, EV charging to name a few. In fact, by financial year 2026-27, over 50% of our power portfolio will be green, making BSES one of the greenest discoms in the country. Today, BSES consumers in Delhi can connect and apply for a host of services by using the mobile app, website, chatbot, WhatsApp, and social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. Appreciating our services and pro-consumer initiatives, REC Limited, a Navratna central power sector undertaking under the Ministry of Power, recently ranked both the BSES power distribution companies as A+, the highest rating for any discom in the country. In fact, over the last 3 years, BRPL and BYPL have consistently emerged at the top, demonstrating our commitment as an inclusive organization that empowers all sections of consumers. BSES, in association with the National Federation of the Blind, launched the electricity bill in Braille for the visually impaired on the occasion of the International Braille Day in 2023. With this, BSES became the first discom in the city and only among a handful in the country to launch a bill in Braille. Apart from the bill in Braille, BSES also launched an upgraded and voice enabled accessible mobile app and doorstep services for the visually impaired. These are catering to the specific needs of the visually impaired and empowering them to better understand the various components of the electricity bill and help avail the full suite of BSES services from the comfort of their home. Constantly working in harmony with the communities in Delhi, we are brightening the lives of Delhi residents. BSES, powering Delhi, empowering consumers.
And now, welcome to session 4, where we will delve into the critical topic of financing the energy transition by 2047, covering India's climate commitments, the necessary financial frameworks, and the role of various stakeholders in transforming the power sector. For this session, we would be joined by Sri Ajay Talgaonkar, member ENC Central Electricity Authority, who would be setting the context for what is to follow in this session. So we'd request him to please come up on the stage. And as he heads towards the stage, let's please hear it for him. Subsequently, there'd be a panel discussion, and for that, as moderator, we are joined by Sri Anish Dey, Global Head for Energy and Natural Resources, KPMG. Sri Anish Dey. We heard a loud cheer for him as he got up to get onto the stage. Joining us as panelists for the panel discussion would be Sri Rajiv Ranjan Jha, Director Finance, Power Finance Corporation.
Director projects.
So Sri Harvinder Singh, Head of Project Finance, Amplus Solar, would also be coming up on stage and joining us. And we had Sri Rajiv Ranjan Jha, Director Project Power Finance Corporation, joining us. Next up, Sri Pradeep Kumar Das, Chairman and Managing Director, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited. Ms. Mani Khurana, Senior Energy Specialist, the World Bank. She cheered loudest for everybody. So let's hear it for her as she comes up the stage. And completing the panel would be Ms. Malvika Pillai, Principal Investment Officer, IFC. Mr. Arun Goyal as well would be joining us. We'd request him to please come up on stage. Let's hear it for Mr. Goyal. And as mentioned earlier, the context for this topic would be said by Sri Ajay Talgaonkar. So we'd request him to please come up and take it forward.
Should start it. Yes. Yeah, it's ready. You can just press next. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow panelists, today's moderator, and all the experts, colleagues, and professionals sitting in the audience. Uh, Today, I will be setting the context for the presentation, for the discussion today. So, in my I have few slides, and what I will do is that I will cover what is the impressive growth of the power sector in India so far. Then I will also take you to the what is expected in future, what kind of additions or growth is required in the power sector in the 2032 and the 2047 time frame. And then I will also give you a kind of a broad estimate of what kind of investments will be required to uh, to add up that kind of a generation capacity to match up the transmission and the distribution that we require, and what are the possible sources of funding that we are looking at, and what are the challenges in attracting that kind of fund. And obviously, thereafter, the panel, we have esteemed panelists who will take it forward and dwell on the various issues. So, coming to the first slide, that is, we can see that the right from 1947, the capacity has grown almost exponentially. We were almost 1.4 gigawatt at the time of independence, and we are 450 or 450 gigawatt right now. But if you look at more recent times, from say 2013-14 onwards, our energy growth is about 4.5 CAGR. It has grown impressively, and peak demand has also increased substantially. Again, the CAGR is of the order of 5%. But these are the numbers for last 10 years. But if you look at last 2 years, there is again substantial change. In the last 2 financial years, we have seen that energy growth of more than 8%, of the order of 8 and 9% in last 2 years. And last year alone, the peak demand has grown by more than 15%. So that if that kind of growth continues, then obviously we will need much more investment than what we are presently envisaging. The deficits have of course come down from 2013-14 level. They were about 4 to 5%, but they have reduced to almost negligible level now. The per capita consumption also has grown from 957 kilowatt hour in 2013-14 to about 1330 kilowatt hour in 2023-24. Now, this is the kind of picture which we are at present we are having for the power sector to come in the future years. The 2032 picture is based on the National Electricity Plan that has been prepared by CA, and 2047 is based on very preliminary studies that CA is still doing. These are not final numbers. This is still work in progress, but these are kind of indicative numbers that we are thinking that what will be having in the 2047. So energy requirement, which is presently of the order of 1750 billion units, will almost more than double. In fact, quite a substantial increase to about 4600 billion units in 2047. But in 2032, it will be about 2500 billion units. Similarly, installed capacity, which is presently about 442 gigawatt, is expected to grow up to 900 gigawatt in 2032 level, and maybe it is more than 4 times it will grow from the present level to 2000 gigawatt in 2047 framework. But most of it, this contribution will come from renewable energy, and there will be almost 10 times increase in the renewable energy capacity, which is presently about 184 gigawatt hour, is expected to be about 1700 gigawatt by 2047. And out of these 1700 gigawatt, about 1200 gigawatt will come from solar, and more than 400 gigawatt will come from wind. That is the expectation as of today. And obviously, storage will give multifold. Today, it is about 5.6 gigawatt, mostly in the form of PSPs and little bit of battery, but it will increase up to 480 gigawatt in 2047. This 480 gigawatt will consist of PSPs as well as batteries, and batteries of various duration, 4 hours, 6 hours, that kind of duration will be there. And obviously, if we have to achieve 207 net zero by 2070, then much more changes will take place beyond 2047 framework also. So based on these kind of numbers, if we work out the kind of the investment that we need up to 2032, as per National Electricity Plan that C has already issued for generation, we will require about 33 lakh crore rupees uh, from now on to 2032. And similarly, I mean, just recently we have issued the national transmission plan also, which requires about 9 lakh crores. And the distribution planning is still work in progress. but the preliminary studies indicate that we will again need about 8 to 9 lakh crores rupees in distribution sector, and most of it will perhaps go, I mean, substantial part of it will go towards smart metering and all that kind of thing. So again, if we add up everything, from now to 2032, we will need about 51 lakh crores rupees of investment in the power sector, and by 2047, it will be about 154 lakh crores. So if we add up together from now up to 2047, we will need about 200 lakh crore rupees, which in terms of say $2.4 trillion, that is the kind of investment we'll be needing. And obviously, in my opinion, it will not be right to say entire this investment to term is as cost of energy transition, because some of it would already have come, would otherwise also would have come, because our demand is already growing, and renewable energies with combined with the batteries has already become a kind of a cost effective option. So even if we do not attempt or do not make a scenario for net zero by 2070, most of this investment will otherwise also be required. So it is not correct to say that entire $2.4 trillion is attributable to energy transition alone. It is the total investment required for the power sector. Now, what can be the possible sources of fund? Traditionally, the investment has come in the power sector from the public sector only. By about 1990, most of it was still in the CPSUs or in the state sector. In the 1990s, when we opened this generation for private sector participation, then IPPs started coming in conventional generation. But even today, if you look at the conventional generation, the capacity which is owned by the public sector, I mean state government and CPSUs combined, is about 66%. But the most of the change has taken place because of renewable energy, because whatever new capacity has come in renewable energy has come from the private sector only. Today, about 75% of the generation capacity is owned by the private sector as far as RE is concerned. So if we add up together, if we look at the installed capacity, about 50% is coming from private sector and 50% is coming from the public sector. But these will continue to be an important source of investment in future. They will have to come in a big way, invest in a big way to achieve the kind of target which we are looking at. International finance will, of course, be important, and in that context, the development financial institutions and multi-development banks will play an important role. Today, we are fortunate that we have representatives from both of them. So, the major difference, of course, both of them bring international finance, but the multi-development bank like World Bank primarily channelize their funds through public sector only, and they kind of get some security from the or some guarantee from the government. That is why their funds are of long term and they come at a lower cost, which is a big advantage as far as our new projects are concerned, because it will keep the tariff low. Uh, as far as the DFIs are concerned, they are open to lending to private sector also. And one common perception that is there is that both DFIs and MDBs, their approval process seems to be a bit long. But we can, of course, work on that and sort out these issues. But these will be an important source of financing for our future projects. Government initiatives will continue to come, like present scheme of RDSS, but government money has a lot of other uses. I mean, there are competing uses like health, like roads, or maybe education, and there are so many other things. So to expect that government will contribute in a big way in the power sector, I think that is not a correct expectation, and we must look at the other sources to bring in the kind of unprecedented kind of investment that we need. Innovative financial instruments will be very important, and like green bonds, etc. We have already heard about it, but I think monetization will be the key. Monetization will help us to unlock the value of the current assets, and if we can use that money for our future growth, that would be excellent source of investment for the future. Now, what are the challenges in mobilization of these funds? The issue is that most of the new technologies that will be coming up will require high upfront investment, and that is why and then obviously, since they are new technologies, traditionally lenders view them as kind of a risky investment. because not much is known about them. They are new on the block, and that is why sometimes the interest rate can be a hindrance. So that is one challenge that we have to look at it. Other is that uh, how can we get the long-term investment, and that too at a low cost. Uh, this will be a challenge. I think we'll open this issue for our discussion, and panelists will obviously come with some solutions. Uh, uh, then next will be the role of public finance. The public sector companies will continue to play a role, and in some cases, it can also help you to bring private investment or debt at a longer tenure. Because if once the government is investing or public sector investing, maybe partly or maybe through grant or maybe through some other means, then it gives a kind of a guarantee or security with which the public sector can lend them. The private sector, private commercial banks can also lend them at a relatively lower rate, because then risk perception reduces. The mobilizing of private financing will be important. And uh, similarly, as I said, MDBs and DFIs will have a long role to play, will have important role to play in this. The important thing will be that, as I said, that there's a perception that their approval process is long, but obviously we can work together. We can have some follow some measures, like for example, we can have a standardized documents, or we can have a framework agreement in which we can include a certain kind of projects so that the lending becomes easy. And then obviously government has to play a proactive role. And we have seen that government is alive to the changing situations, and that policy frameworks are being revised from time to time to facilitate investment. But as it has been pointed out in the morning session also, the financial health of discom will be crucial, because ultimately all the money is flowing from the distribution sector upward. And if the distribution health doesn't improve, then obviously we will have a problem, and then it will be taken as a risky proposition, and obviously investment will come at a higher cost. So just to conclude that, I have already briefed talked about some of the issues. So what are the issues on the table for discussion? How to mobilize low cost fund? How, and then second thing, which I think I've just missed it, that is green taxonomy. Finance minister has already announced in the recent budget that government of India will come out with the climate finance taxonomy. This will play an important role, because if our taxonomy matches with the international standards, and it meets the expectation of international investors, then it will be a big boost for investment in our power sector. Innovative financial tools will be required. Ease of doing business, not only on the part of government, but also on the part of lending institutions, so that it becomes easier to avail the lending facilities. Flexibility of lending, I have briefly touched upon. I will not go into that again. And policy initiatives from the government will be important. So I will leave all these issues on the table, and I will leave it to the able hands of our moderator, Anish, Mr. Anish, to carry it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that succinct presentation. Actually wanted that slide, the second last slide of yours back, because that will help me introduce the panel. You actually put through the issues so succinctly, and it just corresponded with this wonderful panel that we have. But before we go to the panel, many congratulations to you on this Golden Jubilee, to Ghanshyamji and to other colleagues from CEA. This is a very momentous occasion. I know that the scale of love and affection you've got in the form of people who have come over here has exceeded your expectations, but it's a good problem to have. It is just phenomenal, and I can also see the fact that people see the centrality of CEA's role at this time when we are going through so many changes. You need some agency to really hold the thing together, and who better than CEA to do that. So if that's no, this is the previous slide, please. Just the previous slide, if it's okay. So yes, I will shift the chair a little bit. I've got the message. Yes. So no, the next one, please. Yes. So we are talking of all these issues and the agencies, and this is where exactly the panel fits in. We have uh, two of the most senior people from the Indian financial system, Mr. Das, Mr. P.K. Das, CMD IREDA, and Mr. Rajiv Ranjan Jha, Director of Projects of PFC. Uh, we also have at the bottom, we have the policy and regulation. So there we have Mr. Goel, who has worked on policy and regulation. He was formerly the member of CARC, but also Secretary to Government of India. We have the industry, which is going to actually make the investment. So Harinder Singh from Amplus, welcome to the panel. And then we have the development financial institutions, whether they like it or not, their role will come into discussion inevitably, possibly pretty early in the conversation itself. So we have Mani Khurana from the World Bank and Malvika Pillai from IFC. This is a fantastic panel. We'll try to make the best of that. So I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. I'll pose some questions. In the initial rounds, I would want them to spend a few minutes, 3-4 minutes, to give their high-level views on the topic, which Mr. Talgaonkar has put across on the table so succinctly. And then after that, we go into more details. We will try and have some time for questions, but I know that we are running late, so we're going to make sure that we wrap up, if not in the scheduled time, but just a little after that, not too long there. So again, just to pick up from Mr. Talgaokar's presentation, one thing which he said was the last 2 years have been very different. We have seen 8% energy increase and 15% peak demand increase. And that's not something which we have seen before. So if we take long-term averages, it's something. But this is the new India. It has lots of demand. It has lots of potential. And the scale of development which we are seeing is unprecedented. Have we done this before? We haven't done this before, actually. We have never done 60 gigawatts of renewable energy coupled with transmission, coupled with storage. All of that has never been done. Can we do it? I'm sure we can do it. Can we do it the way we are currently conducting ourselves? That is the question which I want to start with the panel. What is your perspective? What needs to change to make sure that we are really catching the tailwind which the Indian economy has? And we have, as an energy sector, a great responsibility for that. So I'm going to start with Chairman Managing Director of IREDA, Mr. PK Das. And I've heard you say this before, that the availability of funds is not necessarily a big constraint, but the cost of finances. Okay. So maybe if I've heard you right, I want you to elaborate on that. If you think that I need to be corrected, I'm very happy to be corrected on also the availability of funds, given that we are talking of very large numbers. We are talking of, the numbers which you quoted, and I've written them down, is 33 lakh crores by 2032, which is more than $400 billion. Okay, so that's the scale of numbers which we are talking about. Is the quantum of funds also a question, along with the cost of funds, which I definitely want you to throw light on, Mr. Das?
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know whether I'm audible or not, because what I was hearing all along, half of the thing I could not understand. I thought something wrong with my hearing, but I checked with Mr. Jha. He also confirmed he is not able to hear. So the uh, organizers should not pay to the mic person. This is the way we do the project appraisal and due diligence. If you have a defective service, you should be immediately go for course correction. This is an industry where the developer has to maintain discipline. We call DAS principle. Discipline by the developer, attitude by the lender, be it IREDA, be it PFC, be it World Bank. I'll come to that. Where is that proactive approach? Delta is there with World Bank and Indian lenders. I don't want to create controversy because she is there. I've already spoken. I'll repeat again here. That was D, and that is A. The next is AS. We talk about policy. Simplicity of the policy by the authority, CEA, or Government of India, or regulator like RBI. So the DAS principle has to be followed. Fund will not be a constraint. You will, so far, quantum was never been a question. Surely, cost of interest is always a question. Whenever it is new and emerging, the project are risky. As per the RBI norms, while doing the due diligence, doing the risk assessment, we have to load the risk premium. We are helpless. We have to see what kind of rating you are having. We both are now AAA, stable. We are also rated globally sovereign category. So be it domestic or be it global fund, we can borrow at the cheapest possible rate. But when it comes to lend you, we have to see what is your rating. And you can improvise your rating. When I'm saying you, it is developer, by ensuring and enabling a disciplined approach in your pursuit for RE development in the country. We know the RE is running in a jet speed since last 10 years. And we are going to continue that with sustainable governance at central level is now certain. New government, new election, but old government continuing again with a bit of change in composition. But as far as RE is concerned, or energy transition is concerned, decarbonization is concerned, it is apolitical. Whoever is coming in power, they have to follow. It is not commitment by any state to India, it is commitment by India to globe. And it is not commitment by simply globe, it is commitment to humankind. We have to save the earth. We don't have any choice but to go for it. Now, your question, so far in India, as of now, whatever funding has been done, almost 35% has come from NBFC space. And in that, both IREDA, PFC, REC has played a major key role. PFC and REC, they have started getting into RE 7 to 8 years back, when large hydro was not defined as RE. Now being RE, large hydro is defined as RE. So their contribution in this sector is also coming as age old. All along, IREDA was the only agency till 2019 December who was doing pure RE, which was coming small hydro category. So getting a fund or arranging a fund domestically or globally will not be a problem as far as quantum is concerned. I'm repeating. But when you talk about interest, you look at the vanilla RE, wind, solar, hydro. Is interest a problem? Any bank is ready to lend and come forward in solar and wind and but the risk is gone. At least you know what the risk you are going to take. If you know the risk, you can go for mitigation. If you can mitigate the risk, then there is no risk. What will become the challenge? We are not talking from electron, we are shifting to molecule. So that is the challenge. More and more the RE grows, more and more dependency on green hydrogen and other alternate energy will come. These are emerging. Wind, solar, hydro was also emerging 25 years back or 30 years back or 20 years back. We have seen per megawatt cost of 24 crore, 16 crore, 18 crore, even 11 crore like that. It has come down to 4 crore, even less than that. And the price for PPA, which is being discovering, that is through competitive bidding. So we cannot say there is a government mandated price or some cattling or something like that. We have already proved to the rest of the world that we can enable the RE to grow in jet speed, what we have exhibited in solar space particularly. We have grown more than 33 times in last 10 years. Coming to the emerging one and a half year back, we started ethanol. We started compressed biogas. We started e-mobility, charging infra. Now we are again getting into last 6 months back, we are going into storage. These are the area where projects viability comes into question. Our ministry, as well as power ministry, they are working very closely, and even other ministries. Because energy transition is the responsibility of most of the ministries, not only RE. Developing RE probably was the responsibility of MNRE, but as far as energy transition and decarbonization is concerned, that is the responsibility of all. So therefore, most of the ministries, they are working together, looking for alternate sources. Since this sector is new and emerging, it is not viable. So viability gap funding may be in the form of subsidy, capital subsidy, or different kind of methods those government are considering, and they're going to continue to do that. They have done in the past. There used to be generation-based incentive in wind solar. There used to be a lot of incentive in small hydro also. But now, since this sector are established, which are emerging, their government is coming forward, be it offshore wind and be it green hydrogen or its derivative. Government has already come out with a policy and come out with a viability gap fund scheme. As far as rate of interest is concerned, in the past, to make the sector matured, entity like World Bank and others, they handholded us. I think most of their funding they had done through IREDA in the initial days, as far as RE is concerned in the country. Now it is no more the sole responsibility of IREDA. It is IREDA, PFC, REC, even HUDCO, all other government NBFC are there, apart from other agencies in the country. Since the industry will be in an infancy stage, not in, will be in an infancy stage with respect to green hydrogen and its derivatives, which is not only in India, globally it is in infancy stage. It is not commercially tried, tested, trusted. So therefore, government has to come forward. And here, since the risk is more, the interest rate is going to be more. If the interest rate is going to more, project is not going to become bankable. Therefore, we need the support of World Bank or other agencies or the developed economies, those who have green funds, those who can come forward to support at the nascent stage, so that once the industry comes into a little bit of maturity stage, then we can go for independency. Till such time, cost of interest will be a concern. We have already submitted a draft report to our ministry, which has already been in circulation in Government of India for having a defined green taxonomy in the country. Till date, we do not have that. Once we have a defined green taxonomy, as on date, who is contributing in IRI, they are not any kind of special benefit because of their investment or involvement or contribution in IRI. So we have suggested that please define some around 17, 18 categories of activities which will be defined as green and IRI. And then we have also proposed that let all these uh, superannuation fund, insurance fund in the country, be it LIC or other insurance companies and other, whatever asset under management they are having, they are investing in the market through different modes. Let them be mandated to have up to 5% of their investment in these green bonds. Once there is a green taxonomy, once they put their money in green bond, then there will be a bond market creation dedicated for green energy space, which is not there as on date. Despite not having that, we have ensured the RE development at 33 times of solar in last 10 years. Despite not having those, IREDA has done single-handedly solely since almost 27 years. 10 years, others came in. So time has come now. Similar kind of support from these developmental agencies will be required, and similar kind of support from the government as well and regulators will be required, who will ensure simplification in their policy and regulations so that there will be no confusions. And last but most important, this RE development or energy transition or energization in the country to become a developed economy by 2047, which requires roughly in the PPT they have shown, which was sigmas coming to 200 lakh crore or 300 lakh crore. Our calculation was it was 285 to 345 lakh crore. Anyway, don't go by this delta of information. These are all estimates. And these are based on series of assumptions. These assumptions undergo with respect to the time. So therefore, don't go by that. Take roughly suppose 300 lakh crores by 2047. And if we bring it down by 32, we are talking of 46 lakh crore only for RE. And if you take energy transition, it will be much more than that. So this kind of investment is quite huge. And we have our one assessment. Since most of the thing will be coming from the new and emerging, so over dependency will be on getting the support from the government NBFCs. Because in the nascent stage, government only supports and government NBFC only take risk. That is what PFC has done in the past, IREDA has done in the past. Why I'm saying PFC? Because when prior to 1990, it was solely the government entities used to have private generation project. Post coming of PFC, private sector generation project came into play. That's a different story that how the accounts acted or responded. There are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of issues over there. Similarly, the time has come now. These three agencies to come together and complement each other and shoulder the responsibility. Our rough estimate is that 50% of the financing requirement is going to come from this NBFC space. Remaining 50% will be coming from bond market and other agencies. And in that, so far, IREDA has played a key role of around contributing to 12 to 13% of the support with respect to the capacity installation. We are not only going to continue to maintain that ratio, further we are going to enhance that. All along we have done project financing. Recently we got an approval for going to retail finance. Why I'm talking retail finance? All along SME, MSME and retail, RE bankability has been a difficult thing. As because most of the banks or other agencies, until unless they're clear and confident about their due diligence, they're not going to come forward and lend. And retail RE requires not only RE knowledge as well as blending of retail operational knowledge, which IREDA doesn't have as on date. We have decided to handhold, come forward, have a partnership kind of thing. Those agencies who are having retail presence and having a complete command over the subject on those local areas will selectively go and partner with them so that in order to address what is the gap today available with respect to RE or green energy retail financing, that is getting addressed soon. Of course, it will take some time, but we have started preparing that. Thank you. I'll hold on here because otherwise
No, no,
I'll take most of your time.
no, it's brilliant because it's set out all the issues which the other panelists would also be picking up on. So I'm glad that you did that. It gave us a very comprehensive picture. I'm going to go to Mr. Goel. Mr. Goel, Mr. Das talked about the developer's responsibilities and the discipline, the governance, which is that he started with that. He also talked about collaboration in the end. And in between, of course, he's covered a range of topics. Now, when we are talking of developers' responsibility, I understand that. But there's the other end of the spectrum where you have the discoms. Okay. If that kind of money has to flow into the system, it has to be paid for, and discoms are a critical part of that. And sometimes they have not been quite as disciplined. Sometimes they have not been quite the partners which you want in this. So, if India really has to make that progress, how critical is going to be the role of discoms in this? And how can we make this a partnership?
Thank you, Anish. So I think, yeah. So Discoms is something I think Secretary Power in the morning also spoke. So it's a very important area, and we consider it as a cash register for the whole sector. And it's very important that the Discoms are sustainable. Now, the financial sustainability of Discoms is required from two aspects. One is that they are able to generate enough surplus to keep their infrastructure. Now, as we move towards energy transition and also more and more renewables sector coming in, so they will be required to pay more and more to the generators or to the transmission companies. So keeping this in view, if we look at the way our distribution companies have performed over the years, so there are two main issues. One is regarding the AT&C losses, another is the gap between average cost of supply and average revenue realization. So in both the areas, if we look at the gap between the two, the Power Finance Corporation, they bring out a very good report every year. So if we look at the 22-23 figures, so for every unit that was supplied in the country, there was a gap of 30 paisa. Now, if we multiply by the number of units that were consumed, so it comes to that even if there is a 10 paisa increase in the sector, roughly 14,000 crores rupees get into the system. So what I want to say is that this price difference between average cost of supply and average revenue realized is very, very important. Now, the other aspect also, if you see AT&C losses, again, we have done quite well over a period of time, but still there is a huge variation between the distribution companies, and even still there are distribution companies where the losses of 30 to 40%, so which needs to be brought down. So if we see over a period of time, the losses have come down and maybe now hovering around 15 to 16% at a national level. But this difference between the different distribution companies, that has to be brought down significantly. Having worked in Delhi's private sector privatization process for three different tenures, so I find that if you look at Delhi and people who have been in Delhi earlier, the things were very, very bad. And to begin with, when the privatization took place, the AT&C losses were more than 50%. And now the losses overall are at 5 to 6% of the sector. And earlier, the lot of resources of the state government used to go into just keeping the power sector afloat and forget about, say, making investment into the sector or keeping your distribution sector intact or keeping it upgraded. So this has made a big change. So I think the distribution companies uh, can, or the state governments can look into this aspect, that whether there is a possibility of privatization. Of course, it's a difficult uh, area politically, but wherever we have seen that such a steps have been taken, this has yielded results. Odisha is the latest example where this is being tried, and I'm sure with Tata's over there, I mean, things will improve. So, I mean, one thing I find is that government of India, particularly Power Ministry, they have taken a number of good steps in last 3 4 years. Particularly the late payment surcharge rules, I think they've been very effective. I mean, they are been path breaking kind of a thing. Now we find that there is some method in madness. The generation companies are getting their dues, and also many of the distribution companies uh, are also generating surpluses. Similarly, other things that have been done by Ministry of Power regarding proper accounting of the subsidy, and also that whenever there is an increase in power purchase cost or increase in fuel prices, they are automatically passed on. So these are steps which have been very effective. Uh, so we really need to see and take further steps to make sure that the distribution companies uh, are financially sustainable. Not only they are sustainable, but they generate enough surpluses. So if we look at overall scenario, generation and transmission, where the central government has been there, so we've been able to create, say, world-class generating stations, world-class interstate transmission network. But once it comes to distribution, I think still there's a lot of scope for improvement if we really want to be a developed country by 2047. So a lot of investments are required in the distribution sector. So here, private sector has to play a role, and we have to see that how we are able to attract investments into distribution, which would be required, particularly when the energy transition is taking place. So I think considering the
Right.
time, I would like to end over here. Yeah.
Thank you, and we'll come back to some of those themes towards the end, Mr. Goel. Let me go over to Mr. Jha, and I'll pick up for a point which Mr. Das mentioned about 50% of the money required of that large scale coming from the NBFCs, from organizations like yours, and that's a major amount of money. That's a major concentration risk also, and we know that there are risks. There are technology risks, which Mr. Jha mentioned. There are also off-taker risks of various kinds, be it the discoms, be it CNI. Everywhere there are significant amount of risks. So what worries you the most if you're looking at that level of scale? Just to put a little more color to it, we have recently seen some very large storage tenders getting cancelled. Okay. And there are various kinds of reasons. Sometimes the off-taker is not ready. Sometimes the documentation is bad. Sometimes there are various kinds of things which are worrisome. What worries you the most as you look at scaling up your portfolio?
इसीलिए इरडा जल्दी प्रोसेस करते हैं लेकिन
Say, thank you, Anis. And it's a very interesting question which you have asked. Like lender, when they start worrying about anything, then there is some basic issue. Uh, Not only with the area where the lender work, also it is going to impact the economy. Important thing here is that yes, we are at a lot of initiative in the energy transition is happening. Already we are very rapidly adding the capacity in renewable energy sector, whether it is solar or wind or even the hybrid kind of thing, or even with the battery. It is evolving every day. So yes, there are projects which need some kind of innovation, some kind of newer things to be done in order to take that project forward. So as far as we are concerned, I think being the largest lender in renewable energy sector, that I think we always claim that, and that is the fact. Uh, People come to us with project which generally lenders find it not comfortable to fund. Uh, I'll give you an example where in a pump storage project in the private sector, it has come. At that time, it was not that heard concept in the lending community, and we understood. We moved ahead. We have sanctioned, and ultimately that project is getting commissioned next financial year, rather before the next financial year. So, and it is a huge loan. Huge loan means like it is not only the pump storage, which is around 1 billion kind of thing, but also the associated renewable energy, wind and solar. That is another something like roughly 600 million. So the huge ticket size, yes, documentation is definitely something which sometimes we feel that some new things need to be done, and but we always encourage borrowers which are who are very much keen to come up with some new technology, something like new concept. Very recently we have also sanctioned green hydrogen. I understand that in India, it is still to be established, as Mr. Das has said, that anything which is, unless until it is commercially viable, it is not prudent for any lender to move ahead with that. And green hydrogen in India is in very nascent stage. It is yet to be established. But abroad, I think there are off takers. There is a market, and that's how we have gone ahead and we have sanctioned green hydrogen. Similarly, that EVs, bigger thing, that also we have gone ahead. So all new projects when they come up, we find it challenging, and challenge always suits us. Uh, and I feel that in renewable energy sector, the way it is evolving, there will always be challenges, and it needs better insight, better understanding, and it needs time as well before lenders actually move ahead. So yes, there are challenges and there are risks as well associated with that. But only thing is that as lenders, as Mr. Das has also touched upon, lenders, once they understand the process, understand the project, understand the technology, they always try to identify the risk area and they try to mitigate as far as possible. Maybe not completely, but at least to the extent it is feasible and possible. And once we complete that, then we move ahead with that. So yes, the kind of targets, the kind of technology varieties which are available and which is going to come, battery energy or green hydrogen, or for that matter pump storage. So all these things are in the early stages of thing, and as and when they become viable, or with the government support and policy intervention, as a lender we see that it is a doable thing, and we definitely feel that the quantum of fund, as you said, you asked initially, quantum of fund which is required to meet those targets, it is huge for that matter, and there will be gap. It is not that the kind of funds which we require to implement those energy transition thing till 2030 or 2032, as Mr. Talgaonkar in his presentation has said, it is a huge money. There will be some gap, and we need to find some innovative thing how to do that. But as Mr. Das has also emphasized that yes, if these things are required to be done, then there has to be some associated risk premium, the cost part. It is not only the quantum, it is also the cost part. The moment cost gets associated with the fund by the lender, then the viability aspect also comes into play for the project. So it is important that with an optimal cost and the quantum of fund, if it is made available. And the way we have moved in last couple of years, the way even like PFC and REC has moved, mm, we feel that we should be able to cater to the requirement at present, because our target is that we should catch up 25% of the market, PFC alone. And if you combine REC, maybe like half of the fund requirement, which we are targeting, we are contemplating to meet with the kind of thing that is what we are requiring. And then we need support from government. We need support from multilateral agencies, policy intervention. There are many things. I think for that we have already made a proposal to government, Ministry of Power, Ministry of Finance, and other thing that like kind of concessions which we need to have in order to attain that. Thank you.
Sure. That's a very, very helpful response. And what you said, challenges are welcome. Honestly, that's not the language financiers always speak, right? And when you are saying that, you know that there's a certain amount of maturity which you have, and that's not only helping you actually lend or your off-takers take it, but in some sense, you also borrow money to lend money, right? So you're an agency which raises money from the capital markets to give it to projects, and that gives those people who are extending those lines of credit to you that confidence that you are a technically competent agency. Now, whether it's by design or by accident, we have a very happy situation in the power sector because it has specialized agencies like yours, PFC, REC, ARIDA. It's not usual. Any other sector of the economy, very few have it. Maybe housing has it. Very few have it. But oil and gas doesn't have it. Mining doesn't have it. Steel doesn't have it. We are just exceptionally lucky that we have, agencies like yours. And when you have that, it actually creates an acceleration effect because then others can lend on the back of that. So that's a big advantage we have, which we must use. So on that tone, I'm going to go to Mani Khurana from the World Bank to talk about it. There's a lot of expectations from MDBs. Ajay Banga has been, questioned, and he's also been trying to push the envelope to open up the MDBs to make sure that your money runs further and faster. And you also work with the PFCs and RECs of the world. So what is changing in the MDBs in the last 1 year? What has changed which will make you relevant for this market?
Thank you. Um, I hope I'm audible. Okay, perfect. I heard your question loud and clear. Thank you, Anish, for that question. So it's interesting. There has been a lot of newspaper articles about the same, about how things are changing on. And I think one message is clear: we need to be faster, and things need to change. And things are moving. So internally, a lot of changes are happening. But I think one very clear message is coming out, and especially in the case of India, and I agree, let's not get into the numbers. It's a huge number that we have to go up there, and we all have to meet it together. And the question remains that we have to be more agile in doing so. And I think the critical factor that we are looking at in every project is how much that initial money that we put in, which is a very small in the big scheme of things, but it is required to open that nascent market, as Mr. Das very clearly said. So it does not make sense for World Bank to be investing in any technology which is already established, like solar, wind. But where World Bank needs to put its money is something like a offshore wind, which hasn't been done in India, and we have a lot to learn out there. And if any developer or even for shared infrastructure, if we go to do the underground cables, the lending rate would be very high right now. So that's where we can add value. So for that, even the risk appetite of the MDBs has to increase a bit. And I think the question remains that how much can we leverage from there? So it's a classic the S curve, right? You commit where the adoption is very low. You make sure that you study the markets properly through grant funds. You give concessional financing to make the first movers come in, And you also, along with that, build the ecosystem around it. When I say ecosystem, so financing is not the only thing which solves all problems. According to me, there is also a lot which goes around it: the policy and regulatory environment, the capacity building which is required, um, also the awareness creation. So, when let's take the example of batteries for a minute, right? When we talk about batteries, we are talking about huge numbers which have to really come into the system to make sure that the RE in our system is integrated and we use it efficiently. Now, if those batteries actually come in those numbers and they reach the end of life, what are we going to do with those batteries? Have the have the system been put in place? How do we have all the standards in place? So all these elements have to be looked at along with the financing aspect. uh, let's take the case of something we did earlier, which was solar rooftop. So when solar rooftop actually came, we all know at that time solar was 2016, the prices were not this low. So it for solar rooftop, it made sense for CNI sector to establish those, put in the system, because they were anyways paying a higher price. So it made sense for them to do it at that time. And at that point of time, obviously, you had to be connected with the distribution companies, right? You have to, if you have to take, you had to be grid connected. And distribution companies did not want to lose their paying customers with CNI going out. What's going to happen if they're only left with the residential consumers? And there was a big problem how the training, the processing had to be taken care of. There were months which used to go by when someone used to apply for the, for someone to come and connect the meter for the solar rooftop. It didn't happen, but a lot has changed since then. But someone had to, there was work that need to be done at the distribution sector also, not only for the entrepreneurs of the solar rooftop. So there's an entire system that has to work together whenever a new nascent technology comes in. And so I think the main thing is leverage more and more, come into any of these new technologies where you can actually show an impact, focus a lot on capacity building. For any of these new technologies, we have been very clearly given the task that, if you're looking at anything, there should not be a shortage of manpower in that system. So that's another thing, I think. And one thing which when we do a stakeholder consultation, whenever we enter new technology, we do a stakeholder consultation. One thing which was very clearly thing that for anyone to put in money in the long term, clarity of project.
Going in there. Right. Thank you. Let's come. You mentioned CNI, you mentioned solar rooftop. Let's come to Harinder from Amplus and pick that question up in terms of how has that experience been, and more importantly, given the government's focus on some of these things, including the PM's Har Ghar Bijli Yojana, how are you looking at those segments? Okay, that's part of this. Are you looking at those segments at all? Second thing is that what are your strategies for faster execution given the scale of the requirement which is coming?
Yeah, thanks, Anish. Thanks for question and highlighting the need for targeting the bottom of pyramid type. We are capturing the studying the projects where it actually demand is. So if you see these SMEs contribute roughly, they consume 25% of the power requirement of the manufacturing sector. So rightly said, financing of these SMEs is a challenge. So the bankability of the product is a challenge. And thanks to the line supported by World Bank initially, Amplus was a very fast mover in this sector, and we tried to cover a lot. We covered a lot of corporates by providing rooftop solutions. And with now, which with that, so we in a way, last 5 years, 6 years have seen most of the creamy layer of that corporate has been covered, but still there is a gap. There is a demand which is coming from like auto ancillaries or textiles or small SMEs, which because of their bankability issue is not able to get the you can get the eye of the CNI developers also, as well as banks. So here, we there could be some financing solutions guided by World Bank, IREDA, and because or some development lines like maybe some sort of approach to target financing towards these sectors because 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 if you want to reduce the SMEs have a challenge on the power cost. It is one of the major component of their cost. If you're able to provide them with cheaper solar power and provide this also help us on discoms to manage demand during peak hours. Because if you have a generation at the consumption point, that will reduce load on a distribution system. So there's a need to look above these larger projects, also on this smaller segment of the economy, and try to address, you can say, their energy requirement because they're also important role in energy transition, either through some rooftop solars or some energy efficiency projects, or even try to improvise the processes which currently are consuming higher energy. You can because if you generate lesser carbon, that is also in a way support the net zero targets. So this is what we have to think now on what do you say, faster execution. I think what is required here is to we need actually a project under development or construction versus the project under operation need different nature of capital. So if a under construction project need a capital, which is there the time is very important. You need a faster money when you're building your assets. When you are in a operation phase, when you are running the project, then the capital you need is probably which is more, you can say, a fixed cost loan. The loan which with no volatility due to economy. So you want a loan which is like 10-year fixed price, 15-year fixed price. So here what is required, I think, is a as Mr. Das rightly said, we need to develop a INR bond market. So we have seen a lot of green bond being placed, but still globally, Indian projects attract greenium or the premium on the green bonds. But in India, the pricing of an INR bond for a corporate versus a INR bond for a renewable project is same. So there is no difference. And if you want to support this industry, you need to give some incentive to the green bonds. Either you can put some mandated exposure for the funds to invest in green bond, or you can give them some tax benefit that if you invest in green bond, your income is will be chargeable at lower tax rate. So you have to incentivize investors also and have to develop this green bond capital market, because if we keep raising dollar bonds for our projects, then we are putting a currency risk on our project, which is a INR cash flows. So
Thanks, Harinder. We just rushing a little bit because we started very quite late. So I'm going to quickly go over to Malvika Pillai, Principal Investment Officer at IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank. Now, you must be really busy at this time, given the amount of scale up which is happening in the private sector. So, how are you coping with it? And most importantly, what are you more bullish about, and what are you a little cautious about at the time when there's so much of demand on financing for the private sector?
Thank you, Anish. I think the sound quality has improved, so let's hope it stays this way. So at IFC, I think we're in a very happy position right now of having a lot of headroom available for India. So our shareholders, including the government of India, gave us some more capital recently, and the priority is to deploy it in climate-related projects. So, renewable energy automatically comes there. We've deployed substantial amounts of capital in India in the last 2 or 3 years, but we are still underweight on lending to the power sector. So we have a lot of projects in our pipeline right now. So there were several things that resonated from what my panelists said. I think the commercial and industrial space clearly is booming, and we've put a lot of debt and equity in there as well. The identical challenge that Harvinder mentioned, which is that you've already tackled the top-rated corporates, the Amazons and the Infosys of the world. But let's say if you're talking to a Wellspun and they have 30 SMEs supplying to them, their credit ratings are not necessarily great, and we ourselves as lenders are guilty of turning up our nose and saying, sorry, not these, only lend to the A-rated. But we're looking at ways to tackle that sector and also to pierce the credit rating on rupee bonds. Because right now there's a lot of capital available with insurance companies and with institutional investors in India. but they are not able to channelize that into renewables because they have certain minimum credit ratings. So it's a bit puzzling as to why operational renewable projects are still getting constrained. So that's one of the topics that we want to take up quite seriously this year. We are very bullish about hybrid power projects and storage. I think, as Mani mentioned, at the World Bank Group, it's probably one of the few organizations where we get asked each time we're funding a project that why do you need to fund this? Is it not funded by somebody else? What is your role? So rather than plain vanilla, I think projects that reduce the load on the grid is something that we are very keen on. And we see a role for storage, not just in generation projects, but also in the T&D network. So we're doing some interesting work with some transcos and regulators on how the discoms and the transmission companies themselves can invest in this. And it's a way for them to defer capex and save energy. Now, coming to, so, all that is the great news, I guess. In terms of what worries us, I think we still see a little bit of a rush in bringing projects to market, which then materializes, then it causes the projects to get delayed or canceled. And then that leads to a credibility problem, particularly for mega projects. So, as lenders, I think we would rather say,
Don't have much time for going for another round. I had lots of questions for all of you otherwise. But Mr. Alikokar, uh, you showed the investment numbers, and of course, there's a bias towards generation, understandably. There's a lot of networks to be built, also smart networks to be built. There has to be storage in the distribution networks, even in the transmission networks. There has to be investments for flexibilization of the transmission networks. So how do those companies, which hopefully will be in surplus in due course, but today are badly cash trapped, in the next 7 years, say till 2030 or till 2032, how do they raise capital to strengthen the networks? That always is a worry for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, one easy and way could be, as I touched briefly in my presentation, was monetization. We know that in 2021, Government of India has already released a national monetization pipeline. The target was to get about 6 lakh crore rupees by 2025. Maybe the progress is not that much, but we have some examples to show. For example, in power sector itself, uh, Power Grid has used the InvIT model to monetize their project-specific companies, which they had won through the TBCB route, tariff-based competitive bidding route. And the same was done by Sterlite also, which is again a private entity, not a public sector. So they have also done the same thing. So there are models available in the power sector itself. I think NHPC was also using an interesting model, which was not kind of a monetization of physical assets per se, but they tried to raise the money by say monetizing of their future revenues in lieu of money upfront. So that is kind of model in which you continue to operate the assets, but you kind of give rights to your future revenues to someone else. And we have seen the private and this monetization model being used in the airports. We have seen in highways, they have done TOT model, that is toll, operate, and transfer. So on the similar lines, we have also issued a guidelines. CA and Ministry of Power has worked together. We called it AOMT model: acquire, operate, maintain, and transfer. Basically, the model is intended for STUs, state transmission utilities, which need a lot of money for strengthening of networks, and they have already operating assets. So they can leverage those assets, maybe hand it over to some maybe private investors or investors who wants to come for say 25 years, or depending on what kind of life you already have that asset. So and then get some money upfront and use it for say the investment that is required for say network strengthening, maybe as a small works. Of course, for bigger works, you can use TBCB model itself, which is available, which most of the states have not utilized so far. But like small works like augmenting a transformer, replacing a transformer in existing substation, or lining line out of a line, all these are require also some money. So this can come from monetization. I think the monetization is a easy way in which they can do it. And just to tell you that we are organizing a workshop, CA is organizing a workshop on 6th of December. We are calling all the states to give them, I mean, more awareness about our AMT model. Let's hope that some more states will come forward and take up this work.
Thank you. There are many ways to do it. In which is one, securitization of revenues is another. We are quickly running out of time. What I wanted to do is open this up for a very few, just one or two brief questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand, address to a specific panelist if you want to. Yes, I'm over there. If somebody can take a mic across, please. Uh, just introduce your.
Sorry, sir. I have.
No, the lady there first. Uh, or please go ahead. We'll mic across there.
Uh, I'm Dr. Jagdish Shivare, professor and tax scientist ISRO. Sir, I have a general question. If, compared to international our sectors in terms of business model and financial priorities, targets, and challenges.
That's a research subject. Anybody? Um, if somebody wants, sorry, the mics. We are coming to the end of the session, but we don't need to be silenced like this. Want to go very quickly?
No, not I want. You want me to go? I go.
Yeah, if you wish.
See, first of all, try to understand. Power is very much connected with your politics, culture, and economics. The blending of all three. You agree or not agree? If you agree, you got the answer. Every country has their political condition, their culture, their economics different. See, now we're talking about distribution companies. Everybody talks about distribution company at loss. It is not that. They are only accounting the loss of others. They are at the receiving end. Same generation company managed by state government officials. Same transmission company managed by transmission official, government officials, state government officials. Same state government officials manage the discom. You put the CEO of the Genco or transfer to the discom of the state, you will find the same situation going on. Why? It is nothing to do with the management. There is some other reason. When you go to decide to tariff, every state has their own, and every state has their own politics. And we have been habituated in getting freebies, and we continue that inertia. Freebies are required at the nascent stage of industry, like a child is at infancy stage, you are the parent have to handhold. Like World Bank was talking about, they are no more keen to come forward as to purchase wind, solar, hydro. That is not required. Because you have to handle in the sector is developed. But we continue to take the benefit of legacy, that kind of incentive, what we used to get in generation-based incentive and other things. So this political, economic, and social issues will be there. As long as those differentiation will be there, the country-specific differentiation will continue. Thank you.
Thank you. No, unfortunately, you have to take it offline. As you saw, I've been warned that we don't have time for any further questions. I do have a final question for all the panelists, but before that, we have a video which you want to play. So please go ahead, play the video, and then I'll ask one short question from all of the panelists.
Thank you, Shri Day. Let's have the video first, like we mentioned earlier, from Shri Suman Sinha, founder, chairman, and CEO, Renew. So, are we ready with the video? A short message from Shri Suman Sinha.
As the Central Electricity Authority marks its golden jubilee, we must celebrate its transformative impact on India's power sector. Over the past 50 years, the CA has been a driving force in advancing India's energy policies, infrastructure, and standards, powering India's progress and securing a brighter, more sustainable future for all. On the road to 2047, with a focus on its Panch Amrit targets, India needs to implement a multifaceted strategy encompassing several elements. Substantial investment in setting up and upgrading its energy infrastructure, strengthening R&D and advancing technologies, including developing efficient energy storage solutions and upgrading grid management systems and transmission lines will be absolutely imperative. Streamlining regulatory frameworks and incentivizing private sector investment will drive faster adoption of clean energy. Additionally, focusing on energy efficiency measures across industries and households, coupled with skill development programs, will ensure a sustainable and self-reliant energy ecosystem. As one of the largest nationally interconnected grids in the world today, with substantial growth in electricity generation from renewable energy sources in the years to come, India offers valuable learnings for countries across the world to imbibe. International cooperation in the power sector holds significant opportunities. By working together, countries can overcome technical, financial, and policy barriers, enabling a more coordinated and effective shift towards clean energy globally. On the journey to a Viksit Bharat 2047, the CEA will continue to play an integral role with its unwavering commitment to enhancing grid reliability, fostering sustainable practices, and advancing technological innovations in meeting the nation's growing electricity needs. My congratulations to Mr. Ghansham Prasad and the entire CEA team on this historic milestone.
Okay, we come to a close. One last question in single word. From now to Viksit Bharat in 2047, if we need one structural reform in the power sector, what is your pick? Single word answers, Mr. Goel.
Uh, See, in my view, considering the energy transition requirements, we will have to have our regulatory as well as policy framework very clear, because we would be requiring a lot of investments. There are studies which are very clear that approximately two-thirds of total investment or the financial requirements would have to come from the domestic sector. And in the domestic sector, another one-third from the international sector, and that could be from the FDI or from the multilateral lending.
So I'm going to pause
Yeah.
you there
So,
because
so the
single
major
word,
reform is that we have to have our policy and regulatory framework so as that we are able to attract the private sector and we are able to give them adequate returns.
policy and regulatory reforms. Money, you had your the hand in your mic, a mic in your hand. Sorry.
One thing which is required, according to me, is a is something, as you know, it's not only the power sector right now. We are looking at industrial, as Mr. Das also said. A lot of ministries have to work together. A lot of organizations have to work together to make this common goal happen. So we'll need some kind of framework that we are talking in the same language and moving towards the same goal. By
Collaboration in its truest form.
through one entity together.
One last thing from Harinder, if you want to do, but very briefly, or Mr. Shah.
I think my only point is to we have to de-risk the discoms or the offtake. As much as we can de-risk it for the lenders is better. The pricing will come down. So we have to de-risk the offtake somehow.
Mr. Jha, last word, very quickly.
Yeah, I have some different perspective. Focusing towards energy transition is all right. I think we must try to achieve that. But energy security should not be compromised for the country in order to achieve Viksit Bharat.
Keep energy security at the center for Viksit Bharat. Thank you. You've been a wonderful panel. We have taken less time than we were allotted, but we started a lot late. But thank you for accommodating all of this. Very welcome. Please put your hands together for the panel.
Thank you, Sridhar. At the start of the panel discussion, we started with the question how to go about financing the energy transition by 2027, rather 2047. And the line that really stood out, the phrase that really stood out was collaboration in its truest form, as summarized by you, Sridhar. And now, time to felicitate our panelists. We are extremely grateful to them for their time and the insights provided. We request Sri Ajay Talgaonkar, member ENC Electricity, Central Electricity Authority, to felicitate our panelists. First up, our moderator, Sri Anish Dey. Let's hear it as our panelists get honored. Shri Talgaonkar felicitating Shri Day. For very smoothly conducting this panel discussion. We were also joined by Shri Rajiv Ranjan Jha, Director Projects, Power Finance Corporation. Let's hear it for Shri Jha. Also joining us was Shri Harvinder Singh, Head of Project Finance, Amplis Solar. Shri Pradeep Kumar Das, Chairman and Managing Director, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited. Shri Arun Goyal, former member, Central Electricity Regulation Commission, former Secretary to Government of India, Cabinet Secretariat. Let's hear it for Shri Goyal, please. Ms. Mani Khurana, Senior Energy Specialist, the World Bank. And Ms. Malvika Pillai, Principal Investment Officer, IFC. And now we'd request Shri Rajiv Ranjan Jha to felicitate Shri Ajay Telgaonkar. A glittering memento to express our gratitude to you, Shri Telgaonkar. And now time for a group picture for this moment to be captured in eternity. Thanks a lot once again to our panelists. And a reminder, the high tea is underway. So for those of you who missed out on it, we'd request you to partake in the refreshment.